I mean, it's a good question. I think it was probably more subconscious. Throughout my upbringing, it was never sort of instilled in me to be a go-getter or to be ambitious and to go and, fend for yourself. I think it was more action spoke louder than words, and it was them acting as role models more than anything. So it was probably me looking at them and their actions and what they did day to day, week to week, month to month, that over time sort of subconsciously was instilled in myself, that funnily enough has come back sort of full circle.
Immortalites, welcome back. We've got Taaj on the podcast today. Now, there's going to be an interesting one because I know of you.
Yeah.
I know a little bit from a few mates of ours. I've seen you at a run club that we go, which is So Run Club here in Brisbane.
Yeah.
But honestly, man, there's probably going to be a lot of discovery in this particular conversation. So honestly, it just comes from a genuine curiosity. How would you describe who Taaj is for me and from probably the individuals listening to this?
Thanks, Juan, obviously, for having me on the podcast. Man, who am I? I'm a brown dude that was born up in Brisbane. My parents were immigrants from Fiji, and I think watching them sort of create a family here in Australia, they originally moved to Melbourne and then moved up to Brisbane for the sunny skies. And we're an active family as well, so sports and things was a big thing as part of our upbringing. So, I sort of call myself the privileged one, being born here in Australia. My parents being the ones that were the immigrants that had to really fight and, try and make it in the world. So it's a big testament to them. But, who am I? I'm sort of the product, I guess, of who they are. So I look up to them quite a lot. And I guess, all the schooling they put me through, all the work they put me through, I'm basically a result of my mum and my dad. So, in terms of, just personality traits and things that, to sort of describe me, again, picking a lot of that up from my parents, which is, I try to be as authentic as I possibly can, to be genuine, and, to persevere and to be ambitious and to actually try and make something for myself. So that probably is who I am in a nutshell.
Yep.
But this is just the beginning of the journey, so let's see where it goes.
See, this is an interesting one. So I want to, for yourself, so the genuineness, the aspirational drive, a few of these things. Would you say that your parents passed that on to you in a very conscious, in a very disciplined way, or was it a case of you saw in them have these skills, have these mindsets, and you went, I look up to them like you're just talking about, and you go, oh yeah, I'm going to emulate that. I'm going to follow that through. Or was it a quite distinct, like, oh no, son, you're being raised in Australia, but this is sort of the skills and the attributes that you really need to take forward?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I think it was probably more subconscious. Throughout my upbringing, it was never sort of instilled in me to be a go-getter or to be ambitious and to go and, fend for yourself. I think it was more action spoke louder than words, and it was them acting as role models more than anything. So it was probably me looking at them and their actions and what they did day to day, week to week, month to month, that over time sort of subconsciously was instilled in myself, that funnily enough has come back sort of full circle because, you sort of have your middle years, there in your 20s when you're just in La La Land, you're dating girls, you're out in the night scene, you're partying, and you're probably not as focused on your goals and your aspirations from a life point of view. But, early on you're picking up on those things, and then probably around now, probably the last few years where it sort of comes full circle where you refocus and remember, I guess, all the actions that your parents did back in the day during your upbringing. So it was probably more subconsciously picking it up throughout my life.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you say that because I've rallied with the idea around, I've got a young daughter, 1.5 years old now, and a lot of what I think of compared to how I grew up is, should I teach her in this way and I should do these things, but that, and maybe in a couple of other instances that I see in life, it's actually they're probably going to pick this up if I go and show these attributes and do these skills, as opposed to, and maybe explicitly trying to get them to learn that. They're probably going to learn that by virtue of just being around it, which is kind of supported by sort of what you're saying there.
Yeah.
So where you position yourself now in terms of what you do? I understand that you're still working at what I'd say like a day-to-day job, right?
Yes.
And that's in the property space.
Yes.
But you also have, and this is where I guess my interest peaked, Good Morning Coffee.
Yeah.
And there's a few variances to this coffee journey, I guess I don't want to understand. But take us back to maybe either why the push for coffee at the beginning, or when did that happen? When was the kernel of the idea so strong that it turned into like, oh no, we got to go into execution of this particular thing?
Yep. Yeah. So taking it back, let's say 4 to 5 years ago, which was when, actually, I'd probably even go before that. So Christian, and I've got to give him a shout out as well. I mean, without him, I wouldn't have been able to do this in the first place. So, Christian, my business partner, friend, and also housemate at one stage of my life. We went to uni together. We both did engineering. He did mining and I did civil. We both sort of got along as lads and as friends initially. And I think that's when our friendship really sort of got initiated. I guess through time, we sort of drifted a little bit, but then reconnected later on in life. But coffee was always something that was within our lives. We've plugged our university many times, and one of our deals that we did with Merlot, we did an interview with them where we paid homage, I guess, to everything that we learned and everything that we experienced at uni, and that was the University of Queensland. There was a Merlot on site. So there's late nights, studying. Engineering was tough. It was bloody tough. I personally don't know how I even got through the whole thing. I still look back and I just think, my word, I just don't know how I studied for those SWOT-VAC exams or whatnot. So, but there was a Merlot on site. There was heavy coffee consumption. That's when it initially started. And then I guess years down the track, we knew that there was something more in life that we wanted to really do with ourselves, rather than just the 9 to 5, something that was ours, and something that we could push out to the world and really offer value to people. So getting into the product space at that time was something that we were contemplating. And it wasn't until I did a trip to Colombia 5 years ago that was predominantly going to be, it was a leisurely trip.
Yep.
It was, Christian's from Santa Marta. I flew into Barranquilla, and also did a bit of travel in Bogota as well. Sort of traveling around there, I sort of was immersed, I guess, in the culture and the traditions of Colombia, Latina sort of culture. I am Indian myself, so, being brought up amongst tradition and culture, it was really interesting to see what South America had to offer. Traveling over there, it was, we sort of saw that, farming was a massive thing over there. Traveling over to the Andes Mountains, in different regions, as dicey as it is in the regions of Huila and Cauca, there was an opportunity. There was an opportunity to basically buy some land, which was neighboring one of Christian's dad's land. At the time, agriculture, I knew nothing about it. But the opportunity was presented. The land was relatively cheap, and there was a lot of skilled labor around the place. So we did a quick feasibility to see what we could possibly grow here, and what we could potentially bring to Australia. Avocados was our initial thought.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah, avocados. And this was, Tim Gurner famously said he smashed, he accused, I guess, the Gen Z, I think at the time, of spending way too much money on smashed avo. $22 a pop. And this is when avocados popped into my mind. And you go to a supermarket, they cost $1, $2 each. You think, great, this is a great business idea. But you think about shelf life and things like that, bringing it over from across the world is just, it just doesn't work. So we thought, what else can we do? And Colombia is one of the, coffee is just one of the best produced things there. The quality, I guess, the altitude, the growing conditions, it's just so fertile. So coffee was just one of those things that we thought, could we make this work? And being here in Australia, myself being a massive, caffeine fiend.
Yep.
And also working in property as well in my 9 to 5. I was building shopping centers. I was building childcares and service stations. And growing up in an Indian takeaway shop, doing my homework in the back of a kitchen. And then my parents went on to Pizza Hut shops. It was kind of, my upbringing was immersed in sort of food and hospitality and coffee consumption at that time. I thought, this is a great market. This is something that I can definitely add value to and I can help out in. And we sort of did a divide and conquer approach where Christian did a lot of the farming. He's Colombian. He speaks Spanish. As much as I try and learn how to speak Spanish, I'll never be as good as he is. I am learning, day to day. But he handles a lot of that. So coffee was something that we thought was perfect, I guess, for the place that it was being grown. So sort of fast forward a number of years after multiple audits and, multiple sort of compliance checks and things like that, we got the bean to, I guess, a level that it was at a quality standard that could be exported to Australia. There's multiple processes.
I was going to say, just on that, what do you mean the quality level for it to come to Australia? Is that in the way that it's processed, or the like TGA or something else? Has some specifics of what you can bring in terms of the actual coffee itself?
Yeah, correct. So I guess coffee, typically a world standard for coffee is there's a cupping standard. So basically you've got to get the green beans as they are, or cherries picked off the tree. They're typically, the skin is removed, the pulp is then removed, and then they're typically washed. They're washed and then they're sun-dried and then they're bagged. Normally, you've got different processing methods. So you can either wash it before the pulp is taken off, or, after the pulp is taken off, or you can infuse it in barrels the same way they do with whiskey or wine or anything like that. Coffee is quite similar. We found that in the Australian market, there was washed coffee was just the best tasting, and probably it was the most common thing. Not knowing who was going to be our customers here in Australia, you're taking a massive gamble on this thing, especially given there's a lot of time, effort and money spent on a farm for 4 to 5 years before even you bring it over. So that was a big part of it. It was a massive gamble. It was a massive risk. But in the back of our minds, we were slowly building a bit of a customer base in our minds. I was probably doing a little bit of the groundwork, but of course you can't sell anything until you have the actual product and people have tasted it. And that's just the product game. Having worked in a 9 to 5 for a consultancy for a long time, I was in the service game and I knew what it was like to be in a consultancy sort of firm. A lot of client facing. I did project management. And so that experience really helped with the sales and marketing side with the coffee. So just back to the processing method, we were audited by the Colombian Coffee Federation.
That's a thing? Wow,
That's
okay.
definitely a thing. Yeah. So they audit us every quarter. It's fortunate that the auditor is, Christian's relative.
Of course,
Not that the results
helps.
are gypped in any way.
No, but it helps, yeah.
So you get some freebie advice on the side, which is always good. But the auditing is definitely a real thing. And we were helped a lot with the cupping to be able to get the maximum possible results so that we could actually export. And that puts Colombia on a map, and it puts them, I guess, in a ranking on the world that just upholds, I guess, the quality standards that Colombia has. So the actual cupping of it, it's a standardized test. It involves basically roasting beans 24 hours later, grinding it, sniffing it, pouring hot water at a certain temperature, and then incrementally tasting it over a 10-minute period. And that basically gives you a little indication as to not just the quality of the beans, but the flavor and the smell that comes out of it. It's a sensory type thing.
Yeah.
And that just gives you a little indication of what the end cup and mouthfeel is going to be. So there's a lot of R&D that's done over there before it even gets exported. So this was something that I knew nothing about.
I was going to say, did you come into
was,
this knowing all that sort of detail, or were you just like, you're an avid coffee drinker, but it was that journey that you would have had to go through there to go, oh wow, there's a lot of that stuff I actually have to meet.
Yeah, absolutely. It's being a consumer, you see the end product, you see what's on the shelves, and you see what's in the end cup, but taking it back to origin and seeing how it's actually grown and planted and brought over was a completely different game. So there was probably a bit of a self-paced discovery there for a number of years before realizing what the end result was going to be. And it is an absolute gamble. It's an absolute risk on bringing something over and not knowing how it would taste. So I think I had confidence in not just Christian's ability to be able to farm and handle that entire process, but sort of talking to the locals when I was over there and traveling there and seeing everything gave me a lot of confidence that these guys know what they're doing. As much of a risk as it was, I think life sometimes you need to take those risks, but it's a calculated risk. But I trusted these guys, and it in the end it paid off. You know,
what was so prior to the first, I guess, product here in Australia and that first sale, I guess, of the product, what was the single biggest challenge on the way to that first batch product here in Australia? So you could tell, what was the single point that might have been like, oh damn, like this is something that we need to address or need to do something about?
I think you'll always hear people in business talking about, tell me someone that actually has not had any issues. Surprisingly, we had no issues. It was absolutely amazing. Everything seemed to have just went so well.
Yeah.
So once we had the beans processed and it to a certain level that we knew the quality was on a world stage. So our beans cupped at an 84 and an 85 plus, which basically means in the specialty cupping scores, typically nothing below 75 can be exported from Colombia.
Right.
Anything above 80 is considered specialty. Here in Brisbane, a lot of the roasters typically use a lower grade of coffee. Specialty coffee is anything above 80. So once we got above that 80 score, that was probably box number one, which we achieved, which was really nice. Shipping and logistics, we knew nothing about exporting. We knew nothing about importing. We didn't even know what a freight forwarder was. We had some indication that these things come on containers, but what size containers? What are the risks out on the sea? You see reels on Instagram of containers falling into the ocean and tsunami or whatever, happening. There's always that fear, but everything seemed to have worked pretty smoothly. I think it's probably a testament to, I guess, the strong connections that Christian made whilst he was over there.
Yeah, okay.
Our supply chain over there is extremely strong. The network and the people that we have over there is very strong. That personal connection and relationships that we have, and that was built over years, is a big part of our success, as well as a lot of the work that I did over here to build, I guess, the customer base, and then the partnerships that we've got with our importers over here to ensure that everything just works smooth. So from growing it and processing it and bagging it and bringing it over, everything went quite smoothly. Coming into Australia, before it even landed, we were trying to sell, and I suppose the challenge was trying to sell nothing at the time, just words. So you can promise things to people in the coffee world, which I personally knew not too much about in the specialty coffee world. People care about cupping scores, people care about tasting notes, people care about mouthfeel, and they were describing words like acidity and bitterness and things like that. And for a guy like me that just enjoyed the caffeine, this was getting a little bit too nerdy for me. But given we're the industry, we had to learn pretty quick. So before the shipment arrived, I wanted to have this thing sold before it even landed, and so brand and I guess reputation was a big thing for me as well. So I didn't want to go out there selling something that I didn't truly know. I'm not in the business about lying or anything like that and telling people that, this has been cupping at a 90 plus or it tastes like licorice and it tastes like this and that when it didn't. So we had to be quite honest with the information that we had at the time. And we were really fortunate that we had some small guys, some small roasters that we directly approached cold that were willing to give us a shot and basically said, once it comes in, give us a taste. And if we like it, we'll purchase. So as soon as that shipment came in, about 3 days before Christmas Eve last year, it was an absolute panic, and rush to be able to get this stuff out. And mind you, this was all while being in a day job.
Yeah.
So,
which and I think this is the part of it to probably explore for individuals who are listening to this. It is, I've talked to a fair few people, I guess, in entrepreneurs are doing their own business. And it's very, 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 very rare that it's an individual who is, oh yeah, I'm just doing this completely because I've got, funds stored away and I can go and do something else. Usually you're doing something else. Like you're putting it together while you're simultaneously, unless you're a multi-successful entrepreneur, you're just doing a brand new enterprise or something else, right? That's completely different. So it's as you're sort of telling the story, it's also, you're having to learn everything about the coffee, you're having to have these direct conversations, and it is all interspersed at the, beyond just your full-time job that you're doing to try and make it all sort of work. During that time as well, I was going to ask you, did you have any, in the importing, in the selling of the coffee, or just the business in general, did you have some individuals that you reached out to as well personally to kind of connecting and go, look, I just want to either play this back or talk about it, that kind of helped you out along that journey to getting to where it is currently even today, with just those beginnings? Did you have individuals, or what sort of resources did you rely on to kind of fortuitously not seem to have much issues as you were kind of building that side of the business at the beginning?
Yeah, I think we probably owe a lot of our smoothness to probably a lot of it was life experience. I think for both of us, and especially myself, it was something that I think it was always instilled within us, and it's business in itself, from seeing my parents and working in their businesses, and then my own experience working in a consultancy firm and university. It was kind of like bringing together all the experience that I had in life, but now it'd be my own thing. And I think that's a big part of the reason why it works so smoothly. In terms of just resources and things like that, that I had to pull on to be able to ensure that everything did work smoothly. A lot of it was working on the fly. A lot of it was probably podcasts, similar to this one here, for example, seeing what information is out there. And as things sort of arose, we would address it just before it would happen. So I suppose proactivity, anticipating what the next step was going to be and researching it ahead of time to ensure that there was going to be no hiccups. And I think a lot of it was owed to probably just external resources like that. Googling, podcasts. There was a few mentors out there that we sort of looked up to. A big one of mine is probably Philip DeBella. Coffee King. He's done this many years ago, and he's got a podcast as well, and he explains a lot, not just about business but about coffee as well. A friend of mine, Reese, his dad is John Lazary. He owns Coffee Club. So he's another sort of mentor and a guy that I looked up to as well. And then through our journey, we've ended up meeting Dean Merlo, who's become quite close to us. These are sort of industry coffee heavyweights that we're in the process of doing a deal with or have got mentorship from. And we probably just owe it to proactivity.
How, actually, this is an interesting question I want to ask you. With sort of those individuals where, largely, unless they're willing to mentor or give this value, a lot of times it's kind of you're taking value. You're extracting value from this sort of individuals. How did you think, or is there a conscious or maybe indirect way that you provided value back to these individuals? So it would be kind of this exchange of, I want your time and your information, but in exchange, I'm doing something or helping you out in some other way, or positioning yourselves so you are able to have this conversation with these individuals. How would you, again, thinking of someone who maybe is thinking in different industries, but they go, this sort of individuals are the ones to talk to. How did you guys position yourselves to be able to have these conversations with these individuals?
I think a big point of difference was that we are the farmer. We own farms in Colombia, and that was a big point of difference to anyone else in the market.
Right.
That probably initially caught a lot of people's interest, especially these industry heavyweights.
That's what caught my, like, honestly, that's what caught my interest when I first like heard about it. I saw it. It was literally the like, oh, that's cool. They're on the farm in Colombia. Like, that's really cool.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think we're living in sort of post-COVID times. And I think if anything, COVID taught us this, I guess having close relationships with your suppliers is a big thing. Minimizing the middleman or just having just strong relationships. So us being the farmer is a big part. And now I guess the cost of living crisis is a big, hot topic that everyone's been talking about. We want to be able to provide something that's affordable to people, being the farmer. So if we're able to sort of cut out the middleman, or we're able to, lower our operational costs, for example, or do things smarter and more efficient, we'll do that, because at the end of the day, we're not saving lives. Coffee is a luxury, and coffee consumption is at an all-time high. It's just some people are just not choosing to go to their local cafe anymore. They'll make it at home or drink instant, for example, lower quality sort of stuff. So we want to be able to bring it out at an affordable price compared to anyone else. So I think being a Colombian farmer was probably the thing that sparked a lot of people's attention. And from a mentorship point of view, a lot of these guys have, we've found talking to them, we have asked them, would you be interested in mentorship and why? And a large part of them is them wanting to contribute and give back to guys that are wanting to actually make a difference in this world, especially in the industry that they know really, really well. Philip DeBella, for example, he's got his own podcast. He's created the Coffee Commune, which is basically a facility for anyone within the coffee industry that they're able to utilize, whether it be roasting or even creating podcasts or trying out their staff in a cafe situation for resourcing wise. So, that's his way of giving back. And so when it comes to us, seeking mentorship, that's something that a lot of these guys are pretty open to. As long as they know that we're taking the advice on board and doing a good job. And I think that comes with trust and time. And slowly but surely, I'm sure we'll prove it to these guys that their words are not falling on deaf ears.
There's I was going to say, there's a few individuals that we know, Nick, maybe Peter, other individuals who are, let's just say, in quote unquote successful entrepreneurs. They've done big things in companies and whatnot. A lot of the things that I sometimes hear from them say is, when talking about mentorship or someone comes up to them and asks questions, the biggest thing is, are you going to follow through with what I'm going to say? Because otherwise, what's the point, right? And it kind of sounds in that way where it sounds like they'd be helpful and guideful to wanting to do things, as long as, you're going to take that into account. I'm not just saying it to someone that's going to drop on deaf ears and it's not going to progress. So, and I think the way that, for individuals listening as well, the way I think you interact is a very open, very genuine, very interested way. Again, 5 years ago, you like coffee. I like coffee. I can't tell you any of the stuff about cupping and whatnot. Sounds like you learned as you go, and you now are talking. Like, as I hear, I'm like, he seems like he's very well versed in the coffee world. So you should be selling this kind of product. Good Morning Coffee now. So you can buy the bags of coffee, right? They're easily available for everyone. They can be distributed to a coffee store. It could be to an individual who can purchase it. But I know that you've also started to also sell the liquid form of Good Morning Coffee. Now, where did that particular spark of the change up, I guess, kind of occur? What landed, what idea came about that went, we could go down this path as well? Was it the market sort of telling you this? Was it an internal thought? What caused this particular extra edition as well as part of the company?
I think it probably happened sooner than we had hoped, given we've only been sort of doing this less than a year now. Year one was all about, I guess, building relationships, getting people to taste our beans. We didn't really think too much about diversifying our product range within the first year. It was certainly something we were looking in year 2 or year 3, but year one was certainly just about, I guess, solidifying our process and knowing our craft before distributing and getting into many different revenue streams. So the liquid form of the coffee, or what we call is cold brew coffee concentrate, which essentially is cold brewed coffee roasted coffee that's ground with cold water and then dripped over a certain amount of time. It's literally just triple filtered water with specialty coffee beans picked from our farm. That's packaged in various volume sizes and then distributed out to bars, restaurants, and the like. That was a revenue stream or a product that came out of, I guess, necessity, because we had a venue that reached out to us and said, hey, do you guys do this? We hadn't have really thought about that, but it was a coffee product. And we basically pivoted to try and meet that customer demand, which opened up a whole different world.
How did that entry, that I'm interested specifically, how did that entry come from that particular venue? Was it through the website? Was it direct connection to yourself? Was it some other format? How did that actually come to the business to request like, hey, we want you to fulfill this particular need?
Yeah, it was through Instagram marketing. We publicized our minor wins at the time of selling roasted coffee and green beans to roasters and also to cafes. Through that channel, I suppose, we saw that someone wanted to actually create their own cold brew using our beans. We then went and found a partner that was able to skip that step and do that rather than the customer having to do that, which then I guess alleviated their time, their labor, and was a convenience to them, which they were happy to pay for. And so we basically created that product from there to save them time in what they needed to do.
Yeah, no, that's interesting because as you were sort of stating, that might have been a 2-year, 3-year thing. The market kind of came knocking and said, hello, I really like this. And then you could check some of the social media around this. It seems like you've started just to put this, the cold brew coffee in concentrate form everywhere in Brisbane, basically. Like it's looking like all I'm seeing is like, oh, this bar here and this club there and then this restaurant here. It's like all of them are taking this coffee, which is awesome, is awesome. That transition or that speed of what we're seeing it everywhere again, and being specific, there's still a 9 to 5 that you're looking at, but this is starting to grow and do all these different varying things. How are you, both of you, managing this kind of influx of connections and relationship building and getting all of these products to what you require? Are you starting to find that the market is asking more of the company than even the company is providing right now? How is that sitting today? Because all it seems in my eyes is like, wow, this is going up and it's going up quick. How's that sitting right now overall for you guys?
Yeah, I think we've worked very, very hard on the back end, and that was a big part of this year and was a big focus for us. So when I say the back end, that's basically the farming, the shipping, the roasting and the brewing, as well as the couriers that go out to the various venues. So a lot of it is already sort of done. The back end is working itself. We started from doing a one-off roast, a one-off cold brew, to now weekly roasts and weekly brewing. We have our strategic partners that we have that roast for us and that brew for us. Our brewer was an ex-Toddy's guy, and Toddy's is basically a patented cold brewing system out of the States. He's moved from the States and he now lives in Brisbane. So he's got a patented system that we utilize and partner with him on, that we R&D quite a bit to get this formula right. And after some time, we've managed to get it right. Because we have a farm in one region in Colombia and another region in Colombia, the flavor profiles can differ. So there is a process there, and we've now got it right, essentially. And based on market feedback and customer feedback, we know what the people want now. Everyone seems to make an espresso martini quite differently as well. There's obviously the base of vodka in there, with some sort of coffee liqueur. Depending on how sweet that is, some of them may add simple syrupable sugar water, and then finished with our, I guess, espresso or cold brew. Each and every venue makes it differently. However, this one particular cold brew that we've created is versatile enough to work with
whichever way.
But we've essentially solidified our back end. Christian and I just work on the front end, i.e. new business. Balancing that with a 9 to 5 is tough. A lot of paperwork and admin is done outside of work hours.
Yep.
We respect our employers, of course, and we're working on their clock. They're paying us, so of course we need to get our work done. But I think we've come to a point in our careers where we're good enough at our craft. We know our stuff. We're able to manage the teams that we're working on and the workload that we're doing. So we try not to overstretch ourselves in our 9 to 5. But of course, new business in some ways requires face-to-face connection. And we're talking before work hours, we're talking lunch times. This is just what needs to be done, especially initially. So we've managed to balance it quite nicely at the moment. But it certainly may become a challenge pretty soon.
Well, as things are like, and that's what I'm seeing in the journey of for this particular company. It's growing, right, and it's growing at what it sounds like it's a great rate. As soon as the potential of expansion to other cities, the expansion of more venues, a large deal, you're kind of looking at, there's kind of a call now to make, because it's starting to have all of its own wheels, where more hours that you spend on the business is going to result in multiple better outcomes than maybe what you're spending anywhere else. And it's a tough decision, right? It's a tough choice to make when it comes to it. And I think the latest that I've seen, I guess both yourself and for Christian in the For Good Morning Coffee, it was you both were kind of finalists, I believe it was, for the 40 under 40 that was hosted here in Brisbane. Again, even just saying that with a year ago, did you guys expect it would be something that would come around so quick that you might even be considered, to be talked about in the same sort of space as other individuals who are pursuing other businesses? Did you guys just go, we have an idea here, but it's just going to be a little bit slower and gentler over the years, and maybe it'll formulate something else? What were your thoughts when you were there on the night, just in terms of where the company was sitting at that point?
Yeah, I mean, just to clarify, it was the 2024 Brisbane Young Entrepreneur of the Year,
Gotcha.
Which was through Business News Australia. 40 under 40 was something that we wanted to do, especially for next year. It's something we'd love to be a part of through the Weekend Edition. So Chrysanthi, who we know at the Weekend Edition, has actually published us in her Brisbane and Gold Coast online magazine, which is really nice. But yeah, given from where we were a year ago to where we are now, we never would have thought we would have achieved what we did within the short space of time, especially to be finalists as part of 2 categories. I mean, to be nominated, I suppose, as a finalist in the startup category was great, because you've got to provide your financials and things like that, so it's all sort of verified. But to also be up against some big dogs in the food, hospo, and beverage category, that was probably a bit of an eye opener for us. That, hey, we're being recognized in this category with the guys that we were with, and that's just, I guess, a testament to how hard we've worked, and I guess the risk that we've put into this. But it's something that recognition and publicity was something that I've personally always wanted as well. There's a lot of hard work that happens in the background, but I mean, being able to speak to people and being able to be recognized for these sorts of things is something that I've always wanted to do.
And it helps, especially when you put there's a lot of hours, a lot of effort put into many years to get to where it's here now. People, again, you see a final product or the bag of coffee, or you taste it, but it's like, oh yeah, that began years and years and years ago in terms of building, putting the relations and getting the product over here and everything like that.
Absolutely.
Where do you see the company then in your eyes over the next few years? Everything going well, and it sounds like there hasn't been an obstacle that's been so large that they couldn't get through it. Seems like it's enough to continue it going. Where do you see the kind of next big prospectus or jump, or next goal that you guys would be looking towards the company to go, that's where you're going to start seeing us now?
I think our next goal is obviously to grow the company's turnover by as much as we can. We're shooting for the stars by trying to 10x the company within the next financial year. And it's also just solidifying our supply chain, delivering a great product. The consistency, the month-on-month returns is something that we're looking for as well. and it's also geographic location. So I think in Brisbane, word of mouth, B2B sales seems to be going okay. We did a trip this week, last week now, to Sydney, talking to some larger roasters down there. So we're starting to talk to, I guess, not just Australia's largest roasters. So our first meeting was with Campos. You know, so they're in supermarkets, they're large, and their most used bean is from Colombia.
Right.
So we're really fortunate to have a meeting with them. We then actually went and had a meeting with Coffee Supreme, and they're basically producing beans for Australia, New Zealand, and Japan.
Right.
So we're already now talking international. And then our final meeting was with Toby's Estate, and Toby's Estate is even bigger than all three of them, being global. So, you know, talking to these sorts of guys within our first year, planting these seeds is a big part of our sort of pipeline, because these sorts of things obviously don't happen in a day. And so these relationships kick off now with the hope that one day we may be able to partner together. We found that coffee is an industry that's extremely relationship based. Growing up,
I wouldn't have thought that. Like, I don't know what I would have thought or expected, but that wouldn't have come to mind.
Yeah, you would think that there would be a commercial approach with these sorts of things. It would be price sensitive, which it certainly is. But from a non-price type criteria, relationship has a massive weighting. At the end of the day, if you're a top lad, people will want to do business with you, and that's what we found, and that's just part of the relationship. So, again, I'm very fortunate that Christian is there because he is a top lad, and he seems to schmooze people quite nicely, turning up his Colombian accent. But a big part of our success is being able to have a relationship with these sorts of guys, and being able to work with the likes of these sorts of guys this soon. I think we're in a fortunate position.
Yeah, it's for you. Again, not in a personal nature, but for how you, I guess, from a mindset perspective, what is it going to take for you or for it to happen where you go, all right, it's everything now. I can drop other things that I'm pursuing and that I'm looking at and just go deep into this. Is it just a full transition in terms of, something like a pay? Is it when there's just such obvious signs that, okay, this is going very heavy. I just want to now dedicate this amount of time to it. What would trigger in your mind, if you've, looked it into detail or not, where it's like, okay, this is now going to have to become the full-time thing because it just is.
Just is. Yeah. It's something that I think about every single day because you just never know when it'll happen. I hope my employer isn't going to be listening to this. You never know, but this will be part of my next performance review.
but look, there's going to be some workplaces that are like that. Fine, I get it. But some of them are just outcome based, right? If you're getting the outcomes that you're doing, that's fine. But also a good workplace or a good place, if someone's pursuing something and that's going to be the betterment for them,
absolutely,
all power to it, right? Which I hope it's going to be aligned that line. But the reality is, look, if it becomes obviously gigantic, then it's like, okay, you're going to go and pursue this. But you obviously it's on a daily basis. Would it just be a case of the risk is now just balanced enough with the value that you're going to jump into it? Or is it a case that even if it doesn't, it's like, okay, I've got to take the risk. I've got to go and jump into it. Where are you sitting in that balance? Like, would you be pulled towards doing a more risky move and just going earlier, even if you're not completely 100% sure that, this is going to be the thing that is going to be locked and loaded?
Yeah. I mean, there's probably a few different options there. I'm probably experienced enough in my 9-to-5 game being property development that I could take a 6-month break and just focus solely on the coffee business and see where that could go. That's option sort of one. Option two, we live in 2024 going on 25. Flexible working is a big thing. You look at places in the Northern Hemisphere like the UK, even Dubai, where full-time working hours are now dropping down to sometimes 4 days a week, and utilizing the extra day to be able to, do it as your personal time. For me, it would be working on the business. So I think option 2, and potentially probably more of a realistic situation, is probably just dropping my hours and seeing if there is the value in that. Because again, my role is new business predominantly. And so new business is created typically during working hours, typically during business hours. However, some venues like pubs and bars and restaurants and things like that operate nighttime. However, they're pumping during a dinner service or during cocktail hour, whatever it may be. The last thing they want to be talking about and talking to is a supplier during that time. So I guess there's that sort of, that way up there. But dropping the number of hours and seeing if the revenue increase and I guess the profit margins increase to be able to supplement a decent, wage drop in my 9 to 5 sort of thing. It certainly is a financial motive initially to see whether, that decision can be made. Our pipeline and our forecast for next year. So I guess just by way of update, right now we're seeking finance for our business. In order to be able to grow to where we want to be growing and also supplying the demand that we've found within the market, we need help with finance. We've been issuing letters of intent out to customers, one of them being Merlot, for example, where they need a lot of beans. We're able to service that in Colombia as well. So we essentially have the supply locked in. We have the demand locked in, but we just can't bring it over because we just don't have the cash to be able to bring it over. It's not just our farm anymore that's supplying the beans. It's neighboring farms. It's cousins. It's relatives of Christians, or it's people within the land that we're having to purchase from to be able to bring it over. So our biggest constraint right now is finance. And I think as part of our forecast, if we end up getting the finance, whether it be a tier 1, 2 or 3 bank, or it could even be an investor, as part of their criteria, if they wanted to take equity in the business, for example, one of the criteria may be you need to quit your 9 to 5. And if that is the ultimatum,
that's what it is.
That could be the decision. That could be the jump.
Okay. I didn't think about that. That's interesting because it could be triggered from an external point of view. It's like, okay, now we're going to do it. That's how it's going to pursue. It's a wonderful problem to have, I guess, listening to that, because you have you have the assured product, you have these letters of intent, like if you give it to us, I think we're ready to rock and roll. And it's just getting that connector in the middle.
It is.
Often, it is a challenge, but it is a nicer challenge to have as opposed to maybe having brought over the coffee beans, let's just say, and not having the availability to distribute that product. Has it got a certain shelf life as well with some of these products in terms of selling them as well? In terms of probably the bags more than anything.
I mean, green beans have a 3-year shelf life. Queensland summers are pretty damn hot. Keeping them in warehouses and things for 3 years is probably not ideal. We try and sell within 6 months. We try and keep stock moving. So that's green beans, which have a nice shelf life. Don't need to be in a temperature controlled sort of facility or anything like that. When it's roasted, peak flavor is between 1 to 3 weeks. So we're roasting fresh every single week now. And our cafe partners that we supply, our customers that we supply, we normally age it for about 10 days. So we peak flavor when it comes to acidity and mouthfeel and bitterness and sweetness, it needs to be aged for about 10 days. So we do need to be quite proactive in our forecasting in order for people to actually get maximum flavor and maximum value from the beans.
Gotcha.
Cold brew coffee concentrate, provided it's refrigerated, can last up to 4 months, if not even longer, which is great for our venue partners because they're able to keep this stuff. They over order, no worries. It just comes down to refrigeration space, whether they have it or not.
It's nice. It doesn't just go, you don't have to move this thing like on a weekly basis, something like that, or it's going to go bad. It's got enough of a shelf life, all the products that you can deal with it. Carl, a final question for you. It's a 2-parter. One, I guess now when you go, because you go to some of these venues, right, that I've seen that goes through, when you have an espresso martini or you have a coffee from some of these shops, what goes through your mind? Like, what goes through your mind? Because you're basically having the coffee, that you yourself was able to put into that particular venue, or if you're having it with somebody else, what's your state of mind in that moment? And then the second part to this question is, what do your parents think of the actual company that you've managed to build out so far? So how would you sort of tackle those two questions?
Yeah, so my state of mind when it comes to actually ordering my own product at a venue that we've partnered with, I mean, I feel super proud of myself that we've able to actually do that. Being able to do deals and converse, I guess, with some of the most high-end venues in all of Brisbane, and some of these venues are on the the stage across Australia, ranking as some of the top restaurants there are, and the fact that we're able to be a supplier when it comes to their cold brew coffee, I'm just immensely proud of that. It's also, I guess, a testament to them wanting to be better as well, and listening to us and their suppliers to have higher quality and an affordable price. So I think when we're able to offer that value, it's really just heartwarming to see that these guys are willing to listen. And so when it comes to my parents, for example, and what they think of the business, I guess they're pretty proud of me on being able to have my own thing and drive and really create value in this world and whatever it may be. They're also big coffee drinkers as well. So I think what is a very special feeling for me is that whenever I go and visit my parents, I'm able to go and bring them my own beans, and they're able to put it through their own coffee machine and serve it up and drink it. So for me to be able to provide them with a product and something that they drink multiple times a day, it's pretty special for me. It's pretty special for me
to be able to have it, like, when you know the product's good and you're seeing being used in a family setting or in the settings that you go out to, and you're like, and it's like, there's no bullshit. There's nothing wrong with this coffee. It's a high quality, as you said. You remember all the process that you went through in the years, and it's like, And when you said that about, like, you do feel that proudness. I think it's some people often don't even let themselves feel that. They go, I need to shy away from that, or I need to grow bigger. And it's a realization like, no, to this point, it's been a success. Everything's worked real well. It's going into all the right places. It's going in the right direction. Be in the present moment. Enjoy the fact that that's happening. You know, you can continue on going.
Absolutely.
Taj, look, appreciate it. Obviously, taking some time out of your day. It's a weekend. Again, we've talked about 9 to 5 and stuff like that. Again, the podcast that I do, this is a side thing for a bit of fun. I've got plenty of other things that I do on a week-to-week basis. So taking the time out, really have appreciated that, mate. There's a lot of stuff there on the coffee that I had never heard about. Honestly, I'm Colombian. I didn't even know some of these things and stuff like that. Appreciate taking the time and having a conversation around that. So hopefully for Good Morning Coffee, where would you send people to actually go check out if they want to, or they're interested around Good Morning Coffee or anything around that?
www.gmcoffee.com.au is our website if you'd like to purchase a bag. Alternatively, you can head to a couple of cafes in the city. Again, it's all on the website, and we have a lot of our venues also on the website as well if you'd like to try the espresso martinis. So
that's what I was going to say. Or go to like one of your favorite like restaurants here in Brisbane. Honestly, you're starting to probably find not too many that don't have this product. Otherwise, go to a place and ask them, request them. Have you got some Good Morning Coffee there in your espresso martini?
Absolutely. Ask them, taste it, and let us know what you think. It's an endless feedback loop. So we're just appreciative of the support that we've had, especially from family and friends. But yeah, if you can, go out to the bars and ask, is Good Morning Coffee in this espresso martini? If not, refer them to me.
Exactly. We'll get them on. All right. Memorial, thank you very much. Taaj, appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.